Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. It is cold. Last I checked, I think it's about 3 degrees outside right now, and probably will hit somewhere around -5 to -7 or 8 tonight. Looks to be a couple of more nights of the really deep cold. In fact, I was looking next week. We're going to hit a high of 43, it says, and that's going to be, man, it'll feel like the middle of the summer. I might run down to the creek and take a dip, with those kind of temperatures. One of the things that many of us, and looking at the maps, the majority of the United States is experiencing unusual cold, okay? We've gotten this cold here before, but it's not normal. And some of you, especially further south, are maybe experiencing record colds that you've never experienced before in that area. And it's a good time to, number one, think about preparedness. I mean, going through something like this isn't too much different than going through, say, a hurricane or a tornado. And in some ways it can be worse because this lasts for a lot longer. A hurricane and a tornado, they're very destructive, but they hit for a moment and then you deal with the aftermath. Whereas with this, we've got at least 3 or 4 days total of these really sub-zero, sub-freezing, crazy cold temperatures, and it's difficult. It's very hard on people, animals, machinery, electronics, everything. I was trying to make a video yesterday and my camera kept freezing. Never had that happen before. It just kept stopping and it was getting too cold. So hopefully it'll make it through today because I warmed it up pretty good before starting. But it's a good time to evaluate your preps. For instance, tonight and into tomorrow, we could receive somewhere between 8 and 12 inches of snow here. And being as far out as we live in the hills and stuff, if that happens, it's very likely that we won't get out for 2 or 3 days because they don't plow these side roads anyways. These little narrow gravel roads almost never get touched. So we have to prepare for not being able to get out. And, for most people, you'd say, well, not leaving your house for 3 or 4 days is not a big deal if that's your choice. But what if something happens? What if an injury happens and you can't get out and the, ambulance can't get to your house? What if things start to break, water pipes freeze, or something happens with animals and you're stuck there? You have to be ready to deal with it. And this is in my opinion, a very basic level of preparedness that a lot of people kind of forget. They look at prepping as being really super cool, getting ready for the apocalypse, getting ready for, Armageddon, getting ready for Civil War, for, economic crash, and, an EMP or grid down scenario, or a, nuclear war, whatever. And those are all valid things to prep for. But this kind of stuff, it's guaranteed to happen at some point. It's almost guaranteed that in your life you're going to experience cold weather, or you're going to experience tornadoes or hurricanes or ice storms. And so you got to prepare, especially if you live out in the country. For you homesteaders and you folks living out in the country, and if you've done it for any length of time, you have to prepare. You have to get ready for it, because it's going to happen, and it's a lot harder. If something happens, I can't just walk down to the corner store to pick something up. You have to deal with it out here, and it also helps bring people a little closer together. People out here, even if you don't know each other, you can be total strangers, and they tend to be a little bit more helpful. In fact, today I got out this morning, and there was a gentleman that had his car wouldn't start. He drove and it parked it, and then it wouldn't start. And we tried jumping it and everything, and it wasn't that. It just would not start. So gave him a ride home so he could get his other vehicle. And don't know the guy from Adam, but it's a kind of how people are out here. We know we have to kind of help each other out because things are different than if you live in where your neighbors are all on top of you and businesses are just a walking distance away. Sometimes it's many miles between businesses or even between neighbors. So it's kind of the good and the bad. You know, the bad thing is that you're out, and if something happens, you're stuck. The good thing is people tend to be a lot more friendly and helpful. But definitely over the next few days, because the majority of you are experiencing some, very cold weather, use it as an opportunity to test your skills and your prepping plan. And it wouldn't even hurt to have a meal or two just out of your preps. Pull them out and try the things out. You never know. You may have to do it anyways. You may lose power. Your water pipes may freeze. You just don't know. So you may end up having to use it out of necessity, not out of training. There's things we have to do. I've been going around today, and will continue to do so until it warms up. Every couple of hours or so, just checking on animals, making sure they're all right, checking on things. Leading up to this, we filled up every available water container we had. Anything that we could find that could hold water, we fill it up because, what if the well freezes? What if pipes freeze and you're not able to use the water? So we filled everything up just in case, and we get ready. You do everything you can to get ready for it. Here's the thing. We may have to be experiencing this more often. I talk about the grand solar minimum fairly often on here, and other channels do also. And there's a little misnomer, a little, misunderstanding in what happens under a grand solar minimum. Typically, and this isn't, the standard, but it's typical. Typical, you're going to have more extremes of weather. Doesn't mean it's going to just be like an ice age where everything's frozen. What it means is that your winters can be much colder, your summers can be hotter, certain regions can be much more dry, and other regions can be much more wet. And we've seen that actually happening. Look on the West Coast. They're very dry over there. They've been dry for the last few years. It's been building and building to where it's very extreme. And look at the wildfires last year. You go over to the East Coast and the Southeast, and you're seeing extreme rain, much more rain than falling than normal. Here in the Midwest, we're dealing with hotter summers and colder winters. This is a pattern that very well could last over the next few decades. In fact, most scientists that are looking into the grand solar minimum that acknowledge it are saying that we could see weather patterns like this for the next 40 years, possibly at least the next 20 to 40 years is a strong possibility. So you have to prepare for this, not just in the moment that we're in right now where it's really cold, but you're going to have to do things to be more prepared throughout the whole year. For instance, it could cause disruption of growing seasons, meaning you may not be able to plant as early. Last year a lot of people around here struggled getting gardens out because it was so wet. It was wet for such a long time that you couldn't get anything planted because it was all mud. And then when you finally did get things planted, it flooded gardens out. And then we could also see winters happening sooner, and colder weather, the freezes and stuff happening at a sooner time. So what it does is it creates a smaller window for growing. So for those of you out like this, having some type of greenhouse can come in big handy of helping get your vegetables started at an earlier time. And if you have a big enough one, you can actually grow things inside of it. Learning to adapt, that's the big difference between us and the rest of the wildlife, is that we're able to adapt a lot easier. And if you look throughout history, humans tend to have adapted pretty good to different circumstances, and in modern times not so much. In modern times, instead of us adapting, we design and build technology to help us get through that, whether it's digital technology or old mechanical technology. And we really need to learn to adapt.
as a people, not just by the tools that we build. And it's not going, going through a grand solar minimum isn't a death sentence. It's not impossible. It's happened many times in the past, and we survived, and some people were even able to flourish. We've just got to realize that some things might have to change. You might have to grow different food and vegetables. There's charts and predictive charts of how it may change the growing seasons in your area. And so if you do some research, some of the research that I've done, I've kind of looked at, we are in growing zone 6A. It's very possible that the temperatures and the seasons could change to where we're more, say a 5, a growing zone 5 or something like that. And so you have to adjust your planting, and in doing that, you want to adjust the seeds and things that you're stocking up on. It doesn't hurt to have backups, like, well, okay, if there's a chance that our growing zones change because of weather patterns and grand solar minimum and stuff, then maybe I should also have some seeds put aside for plants that do better in colder regions, or wetter regions, or drier regions, or something like that. This is part of preparing for it. Also, if you're in areas that's starting to experience colder weather, more abnormal cold weather, like right now, you're going to need more fuel. If you burn wood, and let's just say you live in an area that you would normally go through 4 cords of wood for the winter, you may end up going through 6 cords. If you go through 6 normally, you may go through 7 or 8, and you're going to have to start making those adjustments. So if you have a year's worth of wood, ready, or 2 years worth of wood, you may have to make adjustments. This is something as preparedness-minded, self-sufficient people that we have to kind of be ahead of the curve on. A lot of the world isn't. Most of the world isn't. And once they realize that it's happened, they're like, oh my goodness, what do we do now? How do we change things? Now it's happened. Look at our growing seasons have shortened. We're not able to grow as much food as before because of pattern changes. It's drier here, it's wetter here, it's colder here. So start working now on trying your best to get ready for that. And like I said, you can kind of already see certain areas that are starting to change. The growing seasons are changing, or the weather patterns are changing. So you can start making adjustments for that. This is something that's going to hit us. And I was reading the other day that there are some scientists that are saying, well, this grand solar minimum doesn't look so bad. We already had global warming, and the grand solar minimum might cool us down to a normal level, blah, blah, blah. I'm not buying that, but here's something that you have to factor in. Even, let's just pretend for a moment that that's true. I don't believe it, but let's just say it's true. You also have to factor in all the things that's going on politically. You have to, look at geopolitics when it comes to the food supply, not just what's happening in nature. We're seeing countries unable to support themselves with their food. We're seeing here in the United States some more proposals for encouraging farmers to not produce food anymore. This is one of the things that the new president is wanting to do, is to basically pay farmers to not produce food. We're seeing a lot more restrictions on foods now and food production. They're wanting to basically have some type of microchip, RFID, or some type of way to track every piece of food on the planet. We're seeing it's like it's out on the horizon. We have to get ready for it. So between the weather changes that a lot of people are starting to experience, that are building, I don't think it's an overnight thing, but if you look each year, I heard the other day there are several places on the planet right now that are experiencing record cold weather, or that this past year that it's experienced record rainy weather, all this kind of stuff. It's all affects, and it all has something to do with the end result being that it's going to be more and more difficult to find the foods that you want. They're going to be more expensive, especially when you start factoring in, economic and currency issues. It's, again, we've said it before, it's a big perfect storm that's happening. And so I hope, as much as many of you are experiencing probably some pretty frigid cold, and I hope and I pray that everyone comes out okay and nothing serious happens, I do hope that it's for some of you that may not be taking it as serious, that it can be kind of a wake-up call and realize that what a bad time can kind of feel like. And some of you, might experience some pretty rough, time the next few days, whether it be cold or frozen pipes or power outages or unable to get to the store or to work or anything. This is just something that happens, and it's a very small but definitely a serious way to kind of open your eyes and realize what could be happening long term and how it could affect us long term if we had to deal with this kind of temperatures more often, and this effect upon our ecosystem more often. It would definitely eventually start taking its toll, especially when you factor in all these other things that I've been mentioning. So over the next few days, stay warm, stay inside as much as possible, check on your animals, do the things that you need to do to try to keep all the systems running around the house and around the farm. But also use it as a reminder. Talk to your families about it, your kids, let them know, say, hey, we're not able to get out very much, or the power's out, or whatever it is. This is what it could be like. This is why we prepare. This is why we do the things that we do in case stuff like this happens. All right, folks, I'm gonna go warm up. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.